Last week, we talked about the day that Jesus died. But where do you bury a king? Today on the Midweek Move, we're going to talk about that. Hello and welcome to the Midweek Move, podcast extension of the Healing Place. The podcast where we examine the scriptures line by line, verse by verse, and ask ourselves, what is happening here? And today, ladies and gentlemen, joining me at the microphone is Carlos Renfro. How you doing, man?
Good, man. It's an honor to be here.
It's always great to have conversations with you about the scriptures. We're one of my favorite people to talk to, and this is one of my favorite things to talk about.
What better thing to talk about than the scriptures, man?
This is great. I say all that to say, it's been a wild couple weeks.
Yeah.
Last week we talked about Jesus' death and the surprising celebration that comes in the midst of that. And if you guys didn't have a chance to check that out, really cool revelations came out. Go check it out from last week's episode. This week, we're going to continue the conversation by looking at the burial of Jesus. There's a lot of really interesting things that take place here. Like we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, we're going to be dipping into other books of the Bible to kind of flesh out the story a little bit more. Mark is he's like, boop, 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 we're done, get out of here. And it's for various reasons. One, he's just recording what he's been told, what he's been told by Peter. But also he's writing to a group of people who they need some essential information. We're going to flesh this out a little bit more today by looking at some other passages together.
Mark is kind of like the guy at the meeting taking the meeting minutes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's jump into it. Verse 42, Carlos, of chapter
42,
15.
And when the evening had come, it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath.
Okay, so the day of preparation is a reference to the day before the Sabbath, the Shabbat. Jews have very precise rules, about working on the Sabbath.
Yep.
Very precise rules.
Very precise. I just want to throw something out there.
Yeah.
You people know that I do tech for a living. And my son works for me, and we were shopping on a website. You may have known this website because you do a lot of media and this stuff, B&H Photo.
Right.
I don't know if you ever shopped on that website before, but we were buying stuff on that website, and we put stuff into a cart to pay for it.
Right.
And when we got to the cart to pay for it, it's like it will send you an email when checkout is open because they're closed for Shabbat.
Wow.
Like the website, they don't take payments on their website because they shut it down for Shabbat.
That's interesting.
And so on Sunday when we came home from church from the Healing Place,
right,
the checkout had opened up and I could order the stuff that I needed for my business that I found on the website. So if you want to talk about day of preparation and the Jewish culture being serious about preparation for the Sabbath, that's one of the stories that
That's amazing. I hadn't heard that. There's a guy that I follow on TikTok. His name is Moses, and he's a rabbi. I forgot what grouping of Judaism he's part of, but he talks about often just aspects of being a Jew, and a lot of times he talks about Shabbat and the preparation they got to do into they will warm up a carafe of coffee to last them from the whole time of Shabbos, because you're not allowed to warm up things during Shabbat. And I appreciate what he says, because he says it's not that we're getting around rules, it's just that God's given us these things for a reason, and we're going to honor them, respect them. Right. And so
it's fascinating.
It is. Like some people's ovens and their refrigerators, they actually have a Shabbat mode. You would press a couple buttons, and it puts in a special mode specifically to help you honor Shabbat.
Wow.
With how they do energy sources.
Wow. Getting ingenuity involved.
Oh, yeah. And so you have all this stuff taking place. The day of preparation, however, for the Shabbat that falls before Passover is extra special for them. This is like a next level thing. So having the bodies of 3 Jewish prisoners up on the crosses overnight would have actually desecrated the Shabbat.
Right.
So they needed to do something. Now, traditionally, the Romans would have left the bodies hanging for days.
However long.
Yeah. Even after they're dead, they're like, we're just going to make sure they're dead. We're just going to leave them hanging there. But also as a level of warning, because people would enter the city.
It was a display of Roman power and what they could do.
Exactly. So John 19 tells us that the Jewish leaders actually asked for the process to be expedited so that they could bring the bodies down off the crosses. Not in a kindness to these guys, but purely we don't ruin Shabbat, so we need these guys to be dead now.
Yeah.
So to do this, they broke the legs of the prisoners. Doing this meant the prisoners could no longer push up on the nails on their feet to catch air. Because when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that's what was taking place is they'd push up their feet and on their hands to release tension on their lungs so they can breathe. But they could only hold for so long and they'd fall.
Yep.
And what they would do is they broke the legs of the prisoners, forcing them to suffocate on the cross. But when they came to do it to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead. This action of not breaking his legs, because they saw that he was already dead, actually helps to prove Jesus' messiahship, as it fulfills one of the messianic prophecies in Psalms 34, verse 20. He keeps all his bones, not one of them broken. Now, one aspect of not breaking his bones was another fulfillment of prophecy right there. Now, that being said, being Romans, like, well, we got to make sure he's dead.
Yep.
And so, to confirm it, a Roman soldier pierced the side of Jesus with a spear, an event which the Gospel of John records resulted in a distinct flow of what he called blood and water. This phenomenon is explained by the theory that Jesus died from acute heart failure. Remember we talked about how he didn't take any medication to deaden his nerves. He experienced this in real time. He had anxiety. He had fear. He went through all the heartache. He carried all this, and his heart literally broke.
Yep. It gave up.
Yeah. So now what took place is with the immense physical emotion and agony, the trauma caused the heart to rupture, resulting in a large volume of blood pouring out into the pericardium. I'm having to read from my notes here, which is the sac surrounding the heart. Once circulation ceased, the blood naturally began to separate from thick, clotted red blood cells and leaving to settle also clear, watery serum left behind. So when the soldier delivered the spear, the sac was punctured and out came what looked like water and blood at the same time. This is what John records in his gospel. And this is what takes place amidst this verse 42 here before we get to 43. And I wanted to make sure you guys had the story here because, again, this is part of the bigger picture.
It's happening so fast in the book of Mark, but there's a lot of stuff happening. It's part of the bigger picture. Prophecies are being fulfilled, and the confirmation of who Jesus is and what he came to do is being unfolded even after his death.
Exactly. All right, so verse 43, Carlos?
Verse 43, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself looking for the kingdom of God, took courage and went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus.
Okay, so Mark, he records Joseph of Arimathea goes to Pilate. However, we know from other Gospels that Nicodemus, who was a man from John 3:16, for God so loved the world,
Yep, that guy,
was present also. And now traditionally, you would have the bodies would be surrendered over to family members. Yep. The fact that they're going to this suggests possibly that Mary was so distraught. And, she just saw her son brutally murdered. Perhaps John's trying to take care of her. He's taking her off somewhere for her protection because, potentially with everything going on.
The scene is still kind of hot.
Exactly. My question for you, though, why is it such a big deal that these two prominent Jewish men are stepping up to ask for Jesus' body?
Well, first of all, it may not have worked that the prominent guys wouldn't have stepped up to ask for his body. That could have been a little bit of political leverage,
right.
In favor. Here's a guy who's known on the council, who has some pull, who has some authority in this whole thing. That he has the ability to ask Pilate or whoever Pilate's representative were. If he, they say that he asked Pilate, he might have just been asking Pilate's representative, may not have spoken to him directly,
right,
for the ability to do something with Jesus' body, and they would have been respected Jewish religious leaders as well. And Pilate knew and understood that part of his job was kind of appeasing their religious tradition, that they needed to get the body down and get it buried. Mm-hmm. But also from a standpoint of who Jesus was and what he came to do, that he had an impact inside of that community there, that he had authority and influence through his ministry, And a man like Joseph, who had been looking for the kingdom of God, even though he had resources and influence, he found that and saw that in Jesus, and this affected him and affected Nicodemus, and that there's a contingent of what Jesus came to do that impacted even those that he spent a whole lot of time arguing with.
Right. Exactly. This is when I step back and look at it, though, it's shocking to me, and I wonder if I could have been brave enough, though, to be a man in the society, because again, when both these men, like, they're well respected by other Jewish leaders, who just pushed for the death of this man.
Right. Yeah. Understanding that, hey, not just what the Romans could do, but what your fellow Jews on the council and the Sanhedrin could do. And here you are asking for the body of this guy that we just kind of under the table had crucified.
Exactly. Like, we're not sure what their plan was to deal with Jesus' body, the Jewish leaders, but now you have Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea going, we want to take care of him. And we're about to see what they do to take care of him, which I think would have ostracized them even more in the community as a whole. Go ahead and read that, verse 44 through 45.
Pilate was surprised to hear that he had already died, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he was already dead. And when he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the corpse to Joseph.
So Pilate is understandably surprised that Jesus is already dead, because, like we said last time, this is normally a multi-day issue that takes place. Mark is the only gospel writer to point out this detail, that he asked for confirmation from a Roman centurion. Possibly it was so that the Roman audience would know that Jesus' death had been verified by a Roman military officer. Some have speculated that Jesus, though, rewind. With that, the reason why that's important is because in the early days, they were trying to deny certain things. Here's this growing group of Christians, and they're like, Jesus resurrected, and they're trying to deny it. And so saying, hey, a Roman soldier verified this gives weight to the claims.
Well, the Pilate sent for verification, and that Rome verified that Jesus actually did die.
Exactly.
So you can't pretend like it's a fable that the Jews made up when the governing authorities basically have what would be the equivalent of our death certificate. Yeah, the dude, he died.
Right, exactly. So here's a question for you. Some have speculated that Jesus didn't actually die, as I kind of just said just now. This is still a modern day mythos that people push out. What does the verification of Jesus' death by a Roman officer tell us today about the claims of Jesus' death on the cross?
Well, it makes it, the Bible talks, if you go and read in the Old Testament, you go and read in the law, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, talks about how testimony needs to be verified in the eyes of 2 or 3 witnesses. It gives validity to the claims that are being made, because you got to understand that now after the death and the resurrection and ascension of Jesus, now so much of the belief in the gospel is dependent upon the understanding that Jesus died and rose again.
Right.
Well, so now in order to add validity to that claim that he actually did die, that we didn't pull some shenanigans, we didn't do something that pull the wool off your eyes or a little sleight of hand here.
Right.
No, he did die.
Yeah.
And the Romans verified that he died.
Yeah.
And now that gives that portion of the gospel is greater weight.
Yeah.
That this isn't some rouge, this isn't some trick, that he really did go, even in that short amount of time that wasn't expected, that it was verified, because Pilate was surprised that he was dead that quickly. It was verified that he died. He really did die.
Right. So another one of those talking points that some people make claims of is that, well, Jesus just passed out.
Right.
If a Roman centurion who's done plenty of crucifixions goes, no, he's dead, they know what dead means.
Right.
They know what it looks like.
And I think if I passed out, somebody stabbed me in the side with a spear, I'll wake up.
Exactly.
just maybe, perhaps.
Oh, man. All right. Verse 46, Carlos.
Verse 46. And Joseph brought out a linen shroud, and taking him down, wrapped him in the linen shroud and laid him in the tomb. And that had been cut out of a rock, and he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb.
Okay. So Joseph and Nicodemus remove the body, and they give him a proper burial. Perhaps not the complete honor that Jesus deserved as king, but as what they could give him in that situation. The tomb was Joseph's own, purchased for himself, but now he was giving it to his Lord. We are told in Matthew that a seal was placed over the tomb's entrance. The seal was an official Roman order forbidding the disturbance of the tomb as a whole. Again, this is where I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. We're getting to the point where I don't even know what questions to ask anymore when we get to this point.
No,
but
one thing I grabbed out of this, just maybe just an aside, is you're looking at how God writes a story, not just people writing a story, but how God writes a story and how He has so much consistency. You look at Jesus coming to the earth, no place in the end for Himself, no place for he wasn't born. He wasn't born in a hospital.
Right.
He was born in a manger. He was born in a barn, and He was wrapped in swaddling clothing. And here He is again on the tail end of this whole thing. No place for Himself, no burial plot. Somebody else comes in, wraps Him in linen, just like He came into the earth,
right,
and provides another place for Him to lay and for Him to rest,
right,
just like He did all the way at the beginning.
Yeah, man, I didn't even think about it. That's so true. Man, that's powerful. Also, like, not to mention the fact that like this adds more to the ridicule he would have gotten from the religious leaders.
Oh, absolutely.
He's giving his tomb to what they consider to be a blasphemer.
Yeah,
and
somebody they had put to death.
Yeah, and they just don't care. Like, they're like, this is our God. This is our Lord.
Imagine a criminal going through the court system, being tried and being put to death, and then the council of judges comes in and takes him fresh off his execution and then buries them in their family plot.
Yeah,
that would be crazy. Like, what are you doing? This guy's a criminal. This guy is. The courts have found him guilty, and now the Louisiana State Bar Association of Lawyers have done a crowdfunding. They're paying for this guy's funeral.
Right.
You'd be like, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
It wouldn't make sense.
Right. But if they're standing up, they're going, this is something that's important to us. We're not going to pass this moment.
Right. And it shows that there are people in that life. They may have been afraid to say it. But there are people in that life that believe in His innocence and they believe in His message.
Absolutely.
So and take courage in that. If you're listening to this, take courage in that. You may be doing things or in obedience following something that you believe is part of God's will, and you may not see the fruit of it.
Right.
But take courage in that. If you're doing what the Lord has called you to do, there's something spiritual happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Who knows how much Jesus even saw
exactly.
from Joseph and Nicodemus and these guys, that the fruit of what He was preaching was affecting their life.
Word.
But here, after His death, this whole thing comes full circle and comes back around, and now they have the courage to even stand in opposition to their own peers in order to give Jesus a respectful burial.
Right.
So even if you're witnessing to family members, or you're trying to do the right thing, or you're at your job, or whatever the circumstance, fine, you're trying to do the right thing and things aren't coming out the way that you desire, just know that there are spiritual things that are happening. That God is writing that story.
Right.
You may never know, until some other time later, of the impact that it's having on other people.
So true. All right, let's bring this to a close, Carlos. Verse 47.
47. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid.
So once again, Mark points out that Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were present at the burial of Jesus. This is an important detail because it makes clear that they know exactly where Jesus' grave is. Some have suggested that the grave that the disciples went to was not actually the proper grave of Jesus, because they weren't there for His burial.
Right, yeah. They were all scattered.
Exactly. So when Mary and Magdalene, they've actually suggested that Mary Magdalene and Mary went to the wrong grave originally, saw it was empty, and went back and got the disciples and took them to this empty grave. And they're like, oh, it's empty grave.
Right.
They knew exactly where it was.
No, they followed the process, and this is kind of a proof text.
Right.
That this whole thing, because like I said, now the push is on to verify that what happened to Jesus really did happen to Jesus, because that's important for people to believe who He is, what He said, and that he did die, He did rise again, and that He is the Son of God.
Right.
So now Mark is taking the opportunity to tie up all of these loose ends and to provide the proof text and verifiable eyewitness data that these people do and understand and know what happened, and that there were no shenanigans here.
Right, exactly. And again, we kind of mentioned this last time, not to mention the fact that having women be your primary evidence was a sketchy thing back then.
Yeah, it was.
Because you didn't trust, like the women weren't allowed to do that kind of thing. You get a testimony from a man,
right?
But we're going, no, women saw this. If it was going to be something we were going to fabricate, we would not have these women, specifically these women, to testify.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be somebody else.
Right.
And yet that's what's taking place here. So next week, though, we're going to see something truly miraculous take place. Literally the purpose of Christmas leads to this moment we're going to talk about here next week in Matthew chapter, or Mark chapter 16. But we want to hear from you guys. How has this encouraged you? Has it challenged you? Reach out to us. MediaHub@thpshreveport.com. That's how you can reach out to us. Also, again, we've said this the last several weeks. If you are looking for a church and you're in the Shreveport-Bossier area, come check us out. We're at the Healing Place is at 8957 Kingston Road here in Shreveport. And we have gatherings at 10 a.m. every Sunday morning and then 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday nights. Until next time, have a great week.